So a very warm good evening to all. This is Saloni and welcome to the Malviya Academy. So hello children, आप कैसे हैं? I hope we are doing well. Okay. And in this video we will discuss about the Caroline period, basically about the royalists or the son of being the cavaliers. Okay. We have already discussed in the last video about the Caroline period, the major event of the Caroline period. Okay, the rise of Puritanism, the English Civil War. We have already discussed. Okay, so in this video we will discuss about the Cavalier poets, the supporter of the Charles I, and the most prominent figure of this age is John Milton. Okay. Because of the John Milton, this age is also known as the age of Milton. So let's start our series. So we have already discussed the Caroline period. The time period of the Caroline is 1625 to 1649. Then we have discussed the English Civil War. English Civil War क्यों हुआ था? One of the most important reason is tax. Charles first increased the tax, and the most important example of the tax is the ship tax. Okay. Then we have already discussed the rise of Puritanism. Who is the Puritans? Okay. Puritans are basically a Protestant, but there is daylight difference between the Puritans and the Puritanism. Puritans and the Protestants. Believe you? Then these are the key events which is important for our examination, for our CUET examination. जहाँ पे ड्रामा कब बैन हुआ था, ये पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन मल्टीपल टाइम हमारे एग्जाम में आता है, विच इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. दैन 11-year tyranny की बात हमने की थी. जो 11-year tyranny, the Charles first rule without the interfere of the parliament, the 11-year rule की बात की है 11-year tyranny में. Then feature of the Caroline literary age we have already discussed. Then come to the Cavalier poets, and the most interesting about the Cavaliers. Cavaliers are the supporters of the Charles I. This age was the full of conflicts and conflicts, social conflict, religious conflict, political conflict. But these poets were written on the topic of love, beauty. Okay, and the one of the most important theme, carpe diem theme. What is carpe diem? The meaning of carpe diem is the seize the day or the enjoy the day. Okay. So introduction of the Cavalier poet. These are the Cavaliers. Cavaliers are believed on enjoyment. Cavaliers were believed on the enjoyment, on the joy. Written the writing based on the loyalty to the king. They are also called the royalist. हुआ था ना conflict between the royalist and the parliamentarian. Who are the parliamentarian? Basically Puritans. And our prominent writer, the John Milton, was the Puritan. Okay. John Milton are the supporter of the parliament. John Milton are the supporter of the Oliver Cromwell. That why at the time of Oliver Cromwell, John Milton का जो work है, John Milton एक civil servant थे. At the time of Oliver Cromwell, secretary का position मिला John Milton को. So सब कुछ पढ़ेंगे. Topic पे आते हैं, Cavalier poet. The Cavalier poets emerged during the English Civil War, 1642 to 1651. Okay. Were closely associated with the court of Charles I. They are closely associated with the King Charles I. Okay. The group of poets is known by the elegant, refined style, and they often celebrate the theme of love, loyalty, and the pleasures of life. Their poetry is categorized by its lyrical quality and light-hearted tone. Their poetry is categorized by the lyrical quality and the light-hearted tone, which construct sharply and the more somber and complex word in the metaphysical poet in the same era. And one of the most important characteristic that I have said earlier, that इस time period में metaphysical poetry का continuation चल रहा था. ऐसा नहीं होता है कि particular period खत्म होने के बाद poets gap हो जाए. So Cavaliers के time, at the time of Caroline period, metaphysical poets भी लिख रहे थे. The Thomas Carew is considered as the metaphysical and Cavalier both. Okay, the theme of the metaphysical is also love, beauty, but one of the most important feature, the use of conceit. The use of conceit differ करती है Cavalier and metaphysical को. Characteristic of the Cavalier poetry, कौन कौन सी characteristic? The lyrical quality. Lyrical quality include the musical, the rhyme का use था. एक musical quality, meter and rhyme के use को depict करती है lyrical quality. Then carpe diem, one of the most important characteristic of the Cavaliers. That is the carpe diem. What is the carpe diem? Carpe diem is all about the seize the day or enjoy the present moment, enjoy the present day. आज की टाइम के enjoy करो, कल की चिंता मत करो. That is the major, that is the most important characteristic of the Cavalier poets. The writing of the Cavalier poets. The phrase carpe diem translates the seize the day from Latin. It encourages the individual to make the most present moment rather than the postponing opportunity and deferring enjoyment to the certain future. The concept is often associated with the idea of living life at its fullest, taking rest, embracing the feeling nature of time. The phrase carpe diem originated the Roman poet Horace. It is important. Sometimes people think that the carpe diem word coined by the Cavaliers, but the first time the carpe diem word used by the Horace are ancient Rome, ancient literature, ancient critic, important critic Horace, and the most important work by Horace is Ars Poetica. बहुत important है, criticism में पढ़ते हैं. And his work Odes, अपने work Odes में और कौन कौन से वर्क है Horace के? Odes हैं, Ars Poetica and Satire, Epistle are the work of Horace. Cavalier poets were instrumental in the popularizing the carpe diem theme during the 17th century. Their poetry often emphasized the transient nature of life, arguing reader to appreciate beauty, love and the pleasure while they can. And another characteristic of the Cavalier writing is courtly ideas. Their writing depicted the ideas, courtly ideas, the ideas that are related to the court. This poetry reflects the value of the aristocracy. Cavalier writings related to the upper class society, related to the aristocracy. The Cavalier poet's writing included the royalty. His writing based on the upper class society. Caroline time period is a time period of the conflicts. Religious, social conflict, political conflict, English Civil War. Society में क्या हो रहा है? Literature is the mirror of society. But the Cavaliers were written on the theme of beauty, on the theme of carpe diem. Enjoy the day, enjoy and enjoy. Okay? समझ रहे हो? Cavaliers कैसे हैं? Then elegance and wit. Their poems are marked by the sophisticated use of language, including the clever wordplay, puns and elegant imagery. simplicity and clarity. Unlike the complex metaphysical style के जैसे उन्होंने simplicity, metaphysical जो story, जो poem थे, metaphysical poem basically are the complex. Cavalier poetry is typically straightforward, accessible, emphasizing clarity, simplicity and expression. Then pastoral element. Cavalier uses the pastoral element, uses the depiction of rural life, uses the depiction of nature in their writing. And the most important theme the thing आपके एग्जाम में आता है, सन ऑफ बेन किसे कहा जाता है, ट्राइब्स ऑफ बेन किन्हें कहा जाता है. The Cavalier poets is also known as son of Ben or the tribes of Ben. Why? Because their writing is just similar to the writing of Ben Jonson. ऐसा लगता था जैसे बेन जॉनसन के बेटे ने ही लिखा है, अपनी राइटिंग को एकदम सिमिलर. बेन जॉनसन की राइटिंग के सिमिलर लिखा. That's why they are known as the son of Ben or the tribes of Ben. The term son of Ben refer to the group of Cavalier poets who were the follower of the Ben Jonson and the prominent playwright and the poet of the time. Ben Jonson कब के playwright हैं, कब के poet हैं? Who is the Ben Jonson? Ben Jonson, we have already discussed about the Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson is famous for the comedy of humor. Ben Jonson is also a critic. Criticism में भी उनका नाम है, Timber Discoveries. Ben Jonson क्यों जाना चाहते हैं? For his classical writing. उन्होंने अपनी classical unities को follow किया है. According to the Ben Jonson, शेक्सपियर ने classical unities को follow नहीं करके सही नहीं किया. According to the Ben Jonson, a poet should follow the all unities, follow the rule of the classics. Then the most notable Cavaliers. The first one is Robert Herrick, Richard Lovelace, Sir John Suckling, Thomas Carroll, as sometime Andrea Marvell also considered as the Cavalier. Okay, the one of the two, he is called Mistress by the Andrea Marvell, is very, very important. And it depicts the theme, it's based on the theme of carpe diem. Then the Robert Herrick, Cavalier poets and their important writing. Important work को देखेंगे. Cavalier poet, the first one is Robert Herrick. Robert Herrick, notable work, Hesperides, the magnum opus, considered the 1200 poem. And the most notable writing, To the Virgin to Make Much of Time, is very famous writing by the Robert Herrick. ये आपके एग्जाम में क्वेश्चन आता है, repeated question है. To the Virgin to Make Much of Time is very famous, depicted in the carpe diem theme. Coriana going a Maying and Two Daffodil. Two Daffodil is the poem written by Robert Herrick, and Daffodil, who is the poet, who is the writer of the Daffodil? William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth को क्यों जाना जाता है? William Wordsworth is also great romantic poet, critic. Then quotation, the quotation, this is important. To the Virgin to Make Much of Time, and the quotation, gather ye rosebud while ye may, old time is still a flying, as the same flower that smile today, tomorrow will be dying, is the famous quotation of To the Virgin to Make Much of Time. Herrick poetry often explore the theme of love and feeling nature of life, which an emphasis and enjoining present moment. They are the Cavaliers. So their writing is based on the carpe diem theme. Sometimes he is compared to the William Wordsworth. Why? Because of two daffodil. Because daffodil is written by the William Wordsworth. A.C. Swinburne. Who is A.C. Swinburne? Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood movement. Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood जो group था, art for art's sake. A.C. Swinburne is the Victorian poet called Robert Herrick, the greatest songwriter even born in the English race. As very important line, very important term for our examination, very important statement. Then Richard Lovelace. The two writing of Richard Lovelace is very important to Lucasta going to the war and to Althea from prison. तो both is very very important, बार बार एग्जाम में आता है. Richard Lovelace is basically supporter. Richard Lovelace is basically a Catholic. Richard Lovelace is basically it's not a Catholic. Richard Lovelace is supporter to the Charles I. That's why इनको बार बार जेल जाना पड़ा. जो पार्लियामेंट के सपोर्टर्स थे उनके अकॉर्डिंग रिचर्ड लवलेस को जेल जाना पड़ा. Imprisonment 2 times because of he is the supporter of the Charles I. The most important writing to Lucasta going to war, to Althea from prison, and the scholars' prayers. And the quotation of to Lucasta going to war, I could not love thee, dear, so much loved I not honor more. Then stone wall do not a prison make, not iron bar a case, to Althea from prison. उन्होंने प्रिजन में रह के ये लिखा, that's why to Althea from prison. Lovelace poetry reflect his loyalty to King Charles I. इसीलिए उन्हें जेल जाना पड़ा. And ideal of honor and love often intervening personal feeling with broader political theme. The another important Cavalier poet is the Sir John Suckling. John Suckling किसने फेमस किया था? कार्ड गेम. क्रिकबेज वर्ड को लेकर आए ट्रेंड में, मार्केट में. कार्ड गेम से इंट्रोड्यूस कराया. Is known for the card game. Has influenced by the John Donne. His writing influenced by the John Donne. These are only points that are the important. Okay. Then some notable work. Ballad upon a Wedding, Algora and the Goblins, and one of the most important poem, Why So Pale. अगर क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में आएगा, so Why So Pale and Fond Lover. The two line which is important, Why So Pale and Fond Lover. Prithi, Why So Pale. The Why So Pale is the most famous poem written by the Sir John Suckling. Suckling poetry is marked out, it's a playful and witty tone, often engaging with the theme of love, courtship in the light-hearted manner. Then Thomas Carew. Thomas Carew is also considered as the metaphysical poet. Thomas Carew is known for the originator of the Cavalier. जो actually Thomas Carew is not related to the court. जो Thomas Carew थे वो royalist नहीं थे, वो कोर्ट में नहीं रहते थे, वो चार्ल्स फर्स्ट के नहीं रहते, बट ही इज द ग्रेट सपोर्टर ऑफ चार्ल्स फर्स्ट. चार्ल्स फर्स्ट के वो बहुत बड़े सपोर्टर थे और उनको जो राइटिंग स्टाइल थी वो रॉयलिस्टिक अप्रोच में लिखी होती थी. दैट्स व्हाई ही इज नोन as the originator of the Cavaliers. His work and elegy upon the death and the dean of Saul, Dr. John Donne is important. The rapture, a rapture is important. Basically जो rapture word है वो याद रखना. Rapture word किसने कॉइन किया, किसने लिखा है? rapture word से जो भी वर्क है, थॉमस कैरो. ओके, इंपॉर्टेंट कोटेशन है rapture को. Ask me no more where Jove Bastu, when June is past the fading rose, for in your beauty orient deep this flower as in their couches sleep. Caro poetry often blend the sensuality with the philosophical inquiry, exploring the nature of love and beauty. His work are known for their elegant diction and mastery of form, reflecting both personal passion, broader societal theme. Dan Andrew Marvell. We have already discussed the Andrew Marvell, okay, but in this Cavaliers group, we have only mentioned the Andrew Marvell, and we have already studied the Andrew Marvell work. Okay, so his notable work, his poem, and to his CUET mistress. And the one most quotation, a most important quotation: had we but world enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. This particular stanza include the carpe diem theme. Okay, कहने का मतलब ये है कि अपनी beloved को एंड्रयू मार्वेल कह रहे हैं कि अगर हमारे पास टाइम होता, ओके, सो ये जो तुम्हारा कॉयनेस है, दिस कॉयनेस लेडी वेयर नो क्राइम. तो ये जो तुम टाइम वेस्ट कर रही हो, ये कोई क्राइम नहीं होता. बट हमारे पास फिजिकल लव, बेसिकली दिस लाइन डिपिक्टेड द आइडिया ऑफ द फिजिकल लव. सो उनका कहने का मतलब है कि इफ़ वी हैव द टाइम, इफ़ वी विल द टाइम, सो तुम्हारा ये जो टाइम वेस्ट करना, ये क्राइम नहीं होता, बट नाउ इट इज़ द क्राइम. ओके, कहने का क्या मतलब है कि जस्ट एंजॉय द डे और द सीज द डे, दैट्स व्हाई इट्स डिपिक्टिंग द थीम कार्pe diem. While Marvell is sometimes associated with the Cavalier poets, his note often contain the deeper philosophical political reflection, especially regarding love and the time. Okay, so these are the Cavalier poets. Then move करते हैं हमारे next poet, that is the John Milton, the most important poet of this period. And this Caroline period is also known as John Milton. And John Milton का time period रहा वो 3 era. The first is Caroline, Jacobean period में इनका जन्म हुआ, फिर Caroline period में इनके work, इनके school times, इनके college time study, and the main जो इनका work है एज ए सेक्रेटरी कब ज्वाइन किया, एज ऑफ इंटररेगनम और द ओलिवर क्रॉमवेल के टाइम. एंड इनके लास्ट वर्क जो उनके पैराडाइज लॉस्ट, पैराडाइज रीगेन्ड, इनके जो लास्ट पॉपुलर मेजर वर्क हैं वो कब पब्लिश हुए, कब आए, रेस्टोरेशन पीरियड के टाइम पीरियड में. बेसिकली मिल्टन वॉज द प्यूरिटन, इसीलिए जब मोनार्की रिस्टोर हुई तो मिल्टन को प्रॉब्लम सहना पड़ा. स्पेशली इनके वर्क पब्लिश नहीं करा रहे थे, इन पे क्या लग गया, इनके वर्क को क्या बोला जाने लगा, इनके वर्क को हमारे सोसाइटी के लिए सही नहीं है. ओके, प्रोपोगेंडा, इनके वर्क को प्रोपोगेंडा बोलने जाने लगा. ओके, सो पढ़ते हैं जॉन मिल्टन, आवर परमानेंट फिगर, परमानेंट पोएट, राइटर ऑफ द होल हिस्ट्री ऑफ इंग्लिश लिटरेचर. ओके, so John Milton was born on the 9th December 1608 in London, England, into the prosperous and devout Protestant family. He is belong to the Protestant family, and बाद में हम देखेंगे he's from the he's belong to the Puritans. ये Puritans से मिलते हैं. Okay, and age of interregnum at the time of Oliver Cromwell, इनके most of the work पब्लिश होते, मोस्ट ऑफ द वर्क ये लिखते हैं. इनके फादर जॉन मिल्टन और इनकी मदर सारा जेफरी मिल्टन। इनके फादर क्या थे? एक लीगल स्क्राइब, एंड ऑल्सो इनके फादर क्या थे? एक अच्छे म्यूजिशियन थे, कंपोजर ऑफ द चर्च म्यूजिक। और वहाँ से ही इनको क्या मिला? एक म्यूजिक कंपोज करने का, एक आर्ट कंपोज करने का, पोएट्री कंपोज करने का एक जो आर्ट मिला, वो कहाँ से मिला? इनके फादर से। ओके, एंड हिज मदर इज नोन फॉर हिज पाइटी। His education began at St. Paul's School in London. Then he studied वहाँ पे Latin, Greek and classical literature. Basically, in the whole history of English literature, John Milton को most educated poet कहा जाता है। सबसे ज़्यादा पढ़ा लिखा जो फिगर है वो कौन है? जॉन मिल्टन। जॉन मिल्टन के टाइम में हम देखते हैं जॉन मिल्टन ने लैटिन, ग्रीक और हेब्रू हर तरह की लैंग्वेज इन्हें आती है। इन्होंने सेल्फ स्टडी पे ध्यान दिया। 6 ईयर आफ्टर द कॉलेज, 6 to 7 ईयर इन्होंने अपनी प्राइवेट स्टडी, सेल्फ स्टडी पे लगाया। और दैट टाइम उनका जो लॉस्ट ईयर बोला जाता है, हिडन ईयर बोला जाता है, उस टाइम पीरियड में मिल्टन ने एजुकेशन लिया, स्टडी किया एक एक चीज़ों को, देन अपनी राइटिंग को कंटिन्यू किया। ओके, सो at the age of 16, he entered the Christ College, Cambridge, and one of the most interesting event in the Christ College that John Milton is called the leader of the Christ College, because जॉन मिल्टन का जो कॉम्प्लेक्शन था वो फेयर था, and his curly hair. Because of his curly hair, he is known as the lady of the Christ College. क्योंकि that time women were not allowed in the college, women were not allowed in the Cambridge. उस पूरे कॉलेज में कोई लेडी नहीं थी, इसीलिए उन्हें क्या बोला गया? लेडी ऑफ द क्राइस्ट कॉलेज, which is interesting about the Milton. He earned his Bachelor of Art degree in 1629 and Master of Art in 1632. He is known as the Lady of the Christ College because of his fair complexion and brown hair. At Cambridge, he wrote number of work. Ode, the Morning of the Christ Nativity is very famous. Milton is basically known for the pamphlet. Okay, then after completing his study at Cambridge, Milton returned to his family country home to Hawthorne. He has spent several years in the private study, और इसी प्राइवेट स्टडी में उन्होंने स्टडी किया डीपली, बाइबल को पढ़ा, लैंग्वेजेस को पढ़ा, ओके, क्लासिकल नॉलेज ली, history, philosophy, refining his knowledge, Latin, Greek and Hebrew. Milton was the classical scholar with the deep knowledge of ancient Greek literature, philosophy and the drama. His education at Cambridge with the self-directed study of classics enabled him to become the proficient of Greek as well as Latin and Hebrew. His knowledge of the Greek tragedy evidences later work Samson Agonistes. At the time of Paradise Lost and the Paradise Regained, we have seen that हमारे जॉन मिल्टन का एक बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट वर्क है सैमसन एगोनिस्टिक भी उसके साथ ही पब्लिश होता है. मिल्टन embarked at the grand tour of the Europe. पढ़ाई करने के बाद, प्राइवेट स्टडी, सेल्फ स्टडी करने के बाद उन्होंने टूर स्टार्ट किया. एक सिस्टमेटिक वे में अपनी पूरी लाइफ की जर्नी को उन्होंने रखा. He traveled through the France, Italy and Switzerland, meeting the influential thinker and the writer. and one of the most encounter during this time his meeting with the Galileo Galilei. अपने पैराडाइज लॉस्ट में गैलीलियो गैलीली को भी मेंशन किया है जॉन मिल्टन ने, और उनसे मिलने के बाद मिल्टन को बहुत अच्छा लगता है. Who was under house the arrest of his controversial scientific theory. This meeting had the profound impact on the Milton is referenced in his work Paradise Lost. Okay. Then Milton married with Mary Poole, but Milton married 3 times. मिल्टन का जो फर्स्ट मैरिज है वो किसके साथ है? मैरी पोवेल. बट देयर मैरिज वाज ट्रबल्ड एंड दे सेपरेट सून आफ्टर. मिल्टन पॉलिटिकल एंगेजमेंट began during the English Civil War, in which he supported the parliamentarian cause against the King Charles I. Then after the execution of Charles I's establishment of the Commonwealth of England under the Oliver Cromwell, when the Oliver Cromwell got the power, Milton was appointed as the secretary for the foreign term. Milton was appointed as a secretary at the time of Oliver Cromwell. Okay. Milton was responsible for the writing official government correspondence in Latin and defending the new republic through the propaganda and polemical threat. मिल्टन ने कुछ ऑफिशियल लेटर भी लिखे हैं. ओके, फॉर एग्जाम्पल एरोपेगिटिका, लाइसेंसिंग एक्ट के कॉरेस्पॉन्डेंस में लाइसेंसिंग एक्ट के बेस पे उन्होंने लिखा पर्टिकुलर वर्क एरोपेगिटिका. ओके, Areopagitica is based on the Freeman free verse. His key writing, okay, इसको बाद में देखते हैं क्योंकि पर्टिकुलर एक राइटिंग को इंक्लूड किया गया है. Then, by 1652, Milton had become the totally blind. Milton faced the blindness. At the Restoration period, Milton became the totally blind after the 1660 Restoration period when the monarchy were restored. And Milton इतने great हैं कि अपने blindness के period में भी उन्होंने इतना great work Paradise Lost लिखा है. जब मुझे पता चला, I was shocked. मिल्टन इतने ग्रेट हैं कि अपने ब्लाइंडनेस के पीरियड में भी उन्हें पैराडाइज लॉस्ट जैसे वर्क लिखे विद द हेल्प ऑफ द स्क्राइब, विद द हेल्प ऑफ हिज फ्रेंड्स. द कॉज ऑफ हिज ब्लाइंडनेस एंड डिबेटेड बट द betrayal, fraternity and detachment or the glaucoma are most likely. One of the best known sonnet, when I considered how my light is spent, is also known as On His Blindness. But लेटर जो मिल्टन ने जो पर्टिकुलर सोनेट लिखा, उस सोनेट का नाम व्हेन आई कंसीडर्ड हाउ माई लाइट स्पेंट, एंड बाद में इसे टाइटल दिया गया ऑन हिज ब्लाइंडनेस. किसने दिया? जॉन न्यूटन ने. जॉन न्यूटन ऑन हिज ब्लाइंडनेस इज प्रिजर्व्ड टू डेट फ्रॉम दिस पीरियड. अपॉन द रेस्टोरेशन की टाइम पीरियड, मिल्टन फेयरिंग फॉर हिज लाइफ. मिल्टन का लाइफ जो हो गया वो थोड़ा ट्रबल्ड हो गया, बिकॉज रॉयलिस्ट किसके सपोर्टर थे? मिल्टन आर द सपोर्टर ऑफ द ओलिवर क्रॉमवेल. ओके, मिल्टन की जो राइटिंग थी वो चार्ल्स फर्स्ट के अगेंस्ट में थी. अब उसके फादर के अगेंस्ट में अपने वर्क को लिखने के बाद कोई भी सन इस चीज को क्या करेगा? एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर पाएगा. सो मिल्टन के लिए ये पूरा पीरियड डर भरा था. Went into hiding where the warrant was issued for his arrest and his writing were burned. ऐसा वारंट जारी किया गया कि उनके राइटिंग को क्या किया जाए? स्पॉइल कर दिया जाए, डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया जाए. बट लकीली उनकी राइटिंग सर्वाइव की गई है और इसीलिए अभी हमारे लिटरेचर में है. he re-emerged after a general pardon was issued, okay, but nevertheless arrested or briefly imprisoned before influential friends such as Marvel. Milton died 8 November 1674, was buried in the Church of St. Giles without LAQP01, Fort Street, London. Okay. Milton's political fortune declined the restorations of the monarchy when Charles II was brought back to the throne. Milton was briefly imprisoned and narratively accepted execution for his support to the Commonwealth. So, these are the basic points about the Milton. Then we'll come to the Milton writing. Milton family. Milton was married 3 times. The first time married Pevol, Catherine Woodcock and Elizabeth Minchin. Then come to the Milton writing. Basically, जैसे विलियम शेक्सपियर एंड डिवाइड किया गया, मिल्टन के भी वर्क को 3 पार्ट में डिवाइड किया गया. ओके, बेसिकली जब हम लिटरेचर पढ़ते हैं तब हम मिल्टन के वर्क को डिवाइड करके पढ़ते हैं. ऐसा नहीं है कि पहले ही डिवाइड कर दिया गया. द फर्स्ट पीरियड इज हॉर्थन पीरियड एंड द अर्ली पोइट्री. दैट टाइम मिल्टन राइटिंग स्टाइल जो पोइट्री थी वो वेरी सिंपल, और जब पहले लिख रहे थे तो उनकी राइटिंग स्टाइल उतनी स्टैंडर्ड नहीं थी. जब इनके मिडिल एज में देखेंगे एंड द लेटर एज, पैराडाइज लॉस्ट, इनकी राइटिंग स्टाइल स्टैंडर्ड इंक्रीज होता चला गया. On the morning of the Christ nativity, a beautiful ode in his youth celebrating the birth of the Christ. On the morning of the Christ nativity is the celebrating the occasion of the birth of the Christ. Okay. According to the Milton, क्या दिखाया जाता है इस पर्टिकुलर, ये ओड है, 27 स्टेंजा की ओड है, written in iambic pentameter. इस पर्टिकुलर ओड में एक बच्चे के बर्थ की सीन को दिखाया जाता है. कैडल में है एक बेबी और मिल्टन कंसीडर करते हैं कि ये बेबी क्राइस्ट है. ओके, क्लासिकल मिथोलॉजी को फॉलो किया है, क्लासिकल मैथोलॉजी को फॉलो किया मिल्टन ने. देन ये उसकी फेमस लाइन है. Then another writing on arriving at the age of 23. Another poem or the sonnet. The Milton, another famous sonnet on the arriving at the age of 23. Sonnet reflect the thought on the reaching his 23rd birthday. अपने 23rd birthday पर, अपने 23rd birthday पर वो सेलिब्रेट करते हुए इस पर्टिकुलर सोनेट को लिखते हैं ऑन द अराइविंग एट द एज ऑफ 23. Milton was already concerned with his fortune, particular in his role as the poet and the servant of the god. It is also a Petrarchan sonnet, consists the octave and sestet, following the rhyming scheme ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE. And it's also called How Soon Hath Time. How soon hath time, it's also called. The line, how soon had time, the subtle thief of youth, stolen on his wing my three and the western ear. These are the lines of on arriving at the age of 23 sonnet. Then Allegro second Penseroso, both are important. Allegro depicted the theme of the day. Second Penseroso as depicted the theme of night. इसमें कौन किसका इमेज, डे का इमेज है, इसमें नाइट के थीम को दिखाया है. बेसिकली द एलिग्रो जो टाइटल है चीयरफुल मैन और द जॉयफुल मैन. क्या दिखाया? एंजॉयमेंट, एंटरटेनमेंट, हैप्पीनेस। पेंशरोसो नाइट के टाइम का थीम है, नाइट की टाइम को मेंशन किया है। द मीनिंग ऑफ द पेंशरोसो इज थॉटफुल मैन और द सीरियसफुल मैन। आप ऐसे याद रख सकते हो, एलिग्रो दैट मीन्स दीन का कॉन्सेप्ट है, दीन में जॉय कर रहा है एक आदमी पर्टिकुलर, याद करने के लिए अप्रोच बता रही हूँ बस। एंड पेंशरोसो नाइट का सीन है और उस समय क्या है? सीरियस है मैन। So penseroso that means the thoughtful man or the serious man, and allegro that means a joyful or the cheerful man. It depicted the beauty of nature, focusing on the light-hearted enjoyment of the rural life. Penseroso, thoughtful man. Allegro take place during the day. Penseroso is set at night, with a speaker enjoying the quiet and calm under the star. Okay? Then arcades, commerce and Lycidius. इन तीनों को ट्रिनिटी बोला जाता है, क्योंकि ये अभी ट्रिनिटी कॉलेज में रखा है इनके पर्टिकुलर इस वर्क को, इसीलिए इन तीनों को क्या बोला जाता है? ट्रिनिटी। आर्केडस, कॉमर्स एंड लिसिडियस। Arcades are the least famous, commerce are the most famous, Lycidius are the most famous. Lycidius is the most famous, commerce is the most famous, Arcades is the least famous one. Commerce is the mask, Arcades is also a mask. Milton view of virtue and purity. Arcadius is the short marks of performance piece written and the pastoral entertainment for the Countess Jogger of Derby. Then Lycidius, most important writing of Milton, Lycidius. Lycidius is basically a elegy. किसके डेथ पे लिखा गया? मिल्टन के जो क्लोज फ्रेंड द एडवर्ड किंग, उनके डेथ पे पर्टिकुलर ये एलिजी लिसिडियस लिखी गई। लिसिडियस कंपोज्ड बाय द जॉन मिल्टन सेलिब्रेट द पास्टोरल एलिजी, डेथ ऑफ हिज कॉलेज फ्रेंड एडवर्ड द किंग। एंड व्हाट इज द थीम ऑफ लिसिडियस? Immorality and fame, corruption in the church. Lycidius का थीम क्या क्या है? Immorality. मिल्टन के राइटिंग में पास्टोरल एलिजी में immorality को डिपिक्ट किया गया। Then corruption in the church. Okay, as the one of the famous passages Milton lament. Corruption and contemporary church symbolizing the blind mouth, metaphor for greedy and negligent elegy. Samuel Johnson in his famous critic Milton Lycidius के बारे में Samuel Johnson ने क्या कहा? The lives of most English eminent poet by the Samuel Johnson. उसमें पर्टिकुलर क्या बोला उन्होंने कि मिल्टन की जो लिसिडियस है वो पास्टोरल के रूल को लैक करती है। लिसिडियस फॉर इट्स obscurity, mixing of the mythological and the Christian references, and it's lacked the emotional sincerity. Samuel Johnson criticized the poem Lycidius. Okay. Then the second period, it's also known for the prose and the political writing. Prose में of reformation, Areopagitica. Areopagitica is based on the political writing. The theme of Areopagitica is free men, free verse का theme है. Of reformation, one of the Milton earliest prose tract written at the time England was embroiled in the debate over the nature of church and its role in society. Actually, when the Puritans rise, चर्च का रोल इंक्रीज हुआ. डिमांड क्या था प्यूरिटन्स का? एक्चुअली प्यूरिटन्स डिमांड कर रहे थे कि चर्च का हेड कोई और होना चाहिए और पूरे स्टेट का हेड कोई और होना चाहिए. जैसे एक किंग है, किंग चर्च और स्टेट दोनों का हेड नहीं होगा. सो ऑफ रिफॉर्मेशन में इसी के रिगार्डिंग मिल्टन के व्यूज हैं. ओके, देन एरोपेगेटिका, a defense of freedom of the press and expression, written as the speech against the censorship. Basically, Areopagitica is against the censorship. एक censorship लगाया गया राइटिंग पे, थिएटर पे. क्या censorship था? It was response to the 1643 licensing order, which reintroduced the pre-publication censorship of the printed material in England. Milton's most famous prose work on one of the most important texts, History of Freedom of Speech and Expression. According to the censorship, a writer should be, राइटर को क्या करना होगा? परमिशन लेना होगा अपनी राइटिंग के लिए. And against this censorship, Milton wrote the Areopagitica. Areopagitica has a profound influence on the development of modern nation of free speech. It remains the fundamental text in discussion about the censorship. Then the tenure of the king and the magistrate is another political writing of John Milton, defending the right to execute the tyrant. Right to execute the tyrant. Who is the tyrant? The 11-year tyranny. The Charles I की 11-year tyranny I have discussed earlier. This work was one of the most radical political defenses of regicide in Milton time. And just because of this work, Milton faced trouble. Then iconoclastus. Iconoclastus का मतलब है the image breaker. The another most important writing of the John Milton is Iconoclastus. Was the Milton response to Icon Basici, a book that portrayed the Charles I as a martyr and sanity figure following his execution. Icon basically became the highly popular among the royalists and helped to shape a sympathetic image to the late king. Okay. Then, what is this? Yeah. So, a thesis of civil war, another writing of John Milton. The doctrine and the discipline of divorce is another important work of John Milton. Then, thesis of civil power focuses on the issues of religious liberty, which was the key concern for Milton throughout his life. Then, on his blindness. On his blindness. When I consider how my light is spent, it is also known as on his blindness. Okay. Then, on arriving at the age of 23, I have discussed earlier the rhyme scheme also. Then, the third period of Milton poetry, also called the Later Age. We have discussed the third period in another video. The third period, Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, is very important. So, we will discuss this third period in another video. Okay. आई थिंक इतना इनफ है एक सेशन के लिए, अदरवाइज स्टूडेंट्स बोर हो जाते हैं. सो हमारी क्लासेस चल रही है. द वे ऑफ टीचिंग ठीक लगा हो, सो ज्वाइन आवर क्लासेस मालविया एकेडमी and join our classes. Download the app for the more update, Malviya Academy app. And इसी तरह के अपडेट के लिए बने रहे हमारे चैनल्स के साथ. Malviya Academy CUET we are always ready for your help. Okay? So मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट वीडियो में, नेक्स्ट सेशन में.